Welcome to the Grow Rich podcast by Tech Help Canada, where we share the best online marketing and general business tips. Now for today's host.
This is an audio version of an article from our blog, with AI-generated narration, powered by our AI assistant, HelperX Bot. You can find the full written article on Tech Help Canada, including sources and visuals. The negotiating power around remote work has changed. The pandemic era accelerated work from home, but since then, the market has changed. Remote work statistics show it remains a significant part of the labor landscape, but it's unevenly distributed by job type and is often offered more selectively than many job seekers prefer. Below is a database snapshot of remote work statistics showing where remote work stands today, drawing on government surveys, labor market platforms, and large-scale workforce studies. What people often get wrong is treating remote work as either over or everywhere. The reality is a stable baseline, unevenly distributed by job type, and often more competitive than the headlines suggest. Remote work has stabilized into a new baseline. One of the best baseline remote work statistics is whether people usually work from home, not occasionally. This matters because it filters out one-off flexibility and captures where work has settled. The U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey shows 13.3% of workers worked from home in 2024, slightly lower than 13.8% in 2023, a small shift that signals stabilization rather than a continued surge. Statistics Canada reports that in May 2025, 17.4% of employed people mostly worked from home, down from 18.7% in May 2024. Over the same period, the share who commuted, worked most hours outside the home, rose. Among commuters, the share who usually worked some hours from home also ticked up to 5.1%, from 4.8%. Hybrid is common where work is remote capable. Gallup estimates remote capable roles make up about half of the U.S. workforce. Within that group, Gallup's latest indicator shows hybrid as the dominant setup, with 52% hybrid, 26% exclusively remote, and 21% on-site. Gallup defines hybrid as working remote 10% to less than 100% of the time. On average, Gallup finds hybrid employees spend about 46% of their workweek in the office, roughly 2.3 days per week. That's up from 42% in 2022, but the key detail is that the increase happened earlier. Gallup notes no movement in the past year. Statistics Canada's labor force survey reporting shows the overall share of workers who usually work both at home and outside the home has held at 10%, May 2025. What's shifting is how those hybrid hours are distributed. Among these workers, 44.7% worked at least half their hours outside the home in the reference week, up from 43% in May 2024. What global work from home looks like. Stanford's SIEPR summary of the Global Survey of Working Arrangements shows that the post-pandemic settled version of remote work is usually partial, not full-time. Across a balanced set of 22 countries surveyed consistently in recent waves, average work-from-home levels declined from 1.6 days per week, 2022, to 1.33 days per week, 2023, and then stabilized around 1.27 days per week, late 2024, early 2025. What makes this data especially useful is that it doesn't just give a global average, it shows the range. English-speaking countries, including the US, Canada, UK, Australia, around 1.5 to 2 days per week. Europe, around 1 to 1.5 days per week. Latin America and Africa, about 1 days per week. Asia, around 0.5 to 1 days per week. So globally, work from home usually means about 1 to 2 home days built into the week, depending on where you live and work. The remote work gap. Remote work has become harder to secure, and recent remote work statistics show why. The number of people seeking remote roles hasn't fallen as quickly as the number of remote opportunities being offered. LinkedIn's economic graph captures this well by comparing 1. Remote-only applicants, people applying exclusively to remote roles, with 2. The share of remote jobs available in the market. In Canada, remote-only applicant demand peaked at 16.4%, while remote job availability peaked at 21.2%. However, in 2024, demand was only 4.8 percentage points below its peak. whereas supply was 7.8 percentage points below its peak, indicating that supply cooled faster than demand. The same pattern appears in the US as well. Remote-only demand stayed relatively steady, while remote job availability fell more sharply from its peak. Indeed Hiring Lab reports that remote or hybrid postings peaked at 10.4% Feb 2022 and declined to 7.8% by the end of Oct 2024. Taken together, remote work remains a significant part of the market, but competition has intensified. A lot of candidate attention concentrates on a smaller slice of roles than it did at the peak. Preferences still lean strongly toward flexibility. Preference surveys aren't the same as employer behavior, but they do explain why return-to-office debates stay heated. Most workers still choose flexibility when asked directly. In FlexJob's 2025 State of the Workforce Survey, 3,000-plus U.S. professionals, 98% preferred some form of flexibility, 58% wanted fully remote, 40% preferred hybrid, and only 2% preferred full-time in-office. FlexJobs also found that flexibility influences decisions. 76% would look for a new job if remote work were eliminated, and 69% would accept a pay cut to keep remote work, often 5 to 10%. 85% said remote work is the top factor motivating them to apply. For Canada, Angus Reid's 2025 polling points in a similar direction. 59% of working-age Canadians said they'd prefer either fully remote work, 29%, or more remote than in office, 30%, while 21% preferred being in the office full-time. In knowledge economy and professional sectors under heavier return-to-office pressure, 68% preferred working from home most of the time, and 9% preferred fully on-site. What these remote work statistics tell us about remote work? Remote work has settled into a durable baseline, rather than a temporary spike. But that baseline looks different depending on role type. Where work is remote capable, hybrid is usually the dominant model. Globally, the most common pattern is roughly 1 to 2 work-from-home days per week, depending on the region. At the same time, demand for remote roles remains strong, while the share of remote opportunities is smaller than it was at the peak. So remote roles can feel disproportionately competitive. Preference remote work statistics also point in the same direction. When workers are asked directly, flexibility is the overwhelming choice. That wraps up today's audio article. If you found this helpful, you can explore more on Tech Help Canada and subscribe or become a member for updates and perks.